Good afternoon. I'm Dmitry Sitkovetsky, and this is Q&A with Dima, Transformation, the Art of Reinvention in the Time of the Pandemic. I have a very wonderful guest with me, good friend, fantastic musician, Alexei Ogrintchouk, principal oboe of the Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam, but many, many other things. And this is, of course, we will speak to you in the next hour or so. And welcome to the program,
Alexei. Thank you, Dima. Nice to be
Alyosha.
here.
I can call you Alyosha, of course.
Sure.
We could have done it also in Russian. You could have done it in French, but
that's true.
Anyway. Speaking of French, how come? I know that obviously you were born and raised in Russia, and you probably studied there with the most well-known oboe teacher, Pushechnikov, right?
That's right.
But then rather early on, you went to Paris. How did that happen? Because just for our listeners, if you take a little perspective on all the great Russian artists coming to the West and staying in the West, there have been plenty of pianists, violinists, cellists, conductors, but not until the last maybe 20 years that haven't been any great wind players. And then with your arrival, situation began to change, and now we have quite a few. So start with that.
Sure. Well, that's true. It was quite an unbelievable story, and I have to admit, every time I think back about what happened, I have goosebumps myself. So of course, I have to say, I feel really extremely lucky and thankful to my parents at first place that they put me on this path and on these rails to go further in life. And I think I feel really extremely lucky with the education I had. Yeah. So that's true. I started with Gnesian Special Music School in Moscow, which is very famous worldwide, and we produced, let's say, many wonderful, great Russian artists who are still representing the Russian school here and there in the world. And I was in the class of the patriarch, let's say, of the Russian oboe school, Ivan Pushechnikov, who indeed, I think, did his very best to put on the absolutely highest possible level the Russian oboe school, let's say. So he was academic also. He was writing studies. He had really a number of great works for the block flute for the beginners, and then to play oboe, some etudes, etc., but also some pieces for oboe. So that was a great first educational step in the one of the two probably best schools in Moscow. So there is a Central Music School and Gnesian Music School, equally good, I think. Some teachers are here, some teachers are there, and some students were going in one and some were going to the other. And it went all very well until the moment that by an absolute chain of coincidence, I met a very, very famous French oboe professor, the greatest French oboe professor, Maurice Bourque.
Legendary.
So who is considered as the really absolutely incredible pedagogue. Fantastic personality, great human being, but also he is a father for many French and not only French oboe players. So it was a phone call to my parents by a very famous, maybe the most famous Russian flute professor at the time, Yuri Dolzhikov, who was teaching in Tchaikovsky Conservatory, and who knew me a little bit through the foundation New Names, where I took part being very young in Russia for young talented musicians. And he called my parents and he said to my mother, he said, "You have to bring your son tomorrow to Tchaikovsky Conservatory because the great Maurice Bourque is coming." And I have to admit, it was in 1992. I was 13 years old, and I had no idea who is Maurice Burke.
We was, yeah.
We didn't have any CDs. The recording, to get some good recording, it was very difficult to find. So it was. I didn't know this name, but of course I was very curious. I decided to go, so I had to miss the school for this day. I went to Tchaikovsky Conservatory. My parents pushed me to take my oboe with me just in case, even though it was not at all in the plans that I would have a chance to play for him. And then I went to this room, which in Tchaikovsky Conservatory, which probably could take maximum of 20 or 30 people, and I think it was 80 there, or at least. So it was completely packed. And then this great maître, le maître, Maurice Burke, he came, and it was an absolutely 4 hours master class, which I followed, was absolutely a different universe. I discovered certainly a different planet, about wind instrument, about my instrument, about the oboe, about the approach, about the breathing, etc. It was all completely new, shocking, and good, extremely exciting. So it happened this way through, again, some chain of coincidence that I had a chance to play for him that moment, which was not originally planned at all. And he said, "I will not forget you." So that was the first kind of step. It was an absolutely unforgettable lesson. I remember I played him the Mid Sonata and Telemann Third Fantasy for oboe, so absolutely memorable for me. And then couple of years later, we exchanged some postcards. I think I sent him some postcard for Christmas, and he replied and he said, "Can you please send me the recording of yours?" So I sent him the recording, which was a very brand new recording at that moment. I just turned 15, with a chamber orchestra of my school, with some Baroque oboe concertos, Gnesin virtuosi, which I sent to him. And then we received a very big letter from him saying that he is also a father of the family, and he understands that it's also very young. But after listening to this recording, he thought I should come to Paris to try to pass the entrance exam to the CNSM, to the National Conservatory in Paris. And of course, it was back to 1995. So I just turned 16 at this moment, and I went to Paris, and my father accompanied me because we were all full of different kind of emotions, of course. And I still consider, and I played this entrance exam, and I still consider this place to be a part of the oboe class in Paris as my absolutely biggest victory, because it was a probably new start, really completely into professional life, 100%, but also most unforgettable and most important period as a human. Being 16, certainly I left being an only child. I had to leave from Moscow, and with the support of the scholarship which I got from the French government, because I don't think my parents, being both wonderful professional pianists, but still pianists, in that time I could hardly imagine they could support me financially to live full life in Paris in that time. So it was most unforgettable and most important, building myself as a human and as a professional oboe player period, which gave me many necessary ingredients to continue further to my orchestral experience and soloistic experience and so on. But so Maurice and my other teacher, Jacques Thies, who is a principal in Paris Opera and still teaching in Paris, and Jean-Louis Capizalli, who is now only professor in different places in Lyon and Lausanne. I think I was very lucky to have really creme de la creme of the French school. And when we think that oboe, originally it's a French word, hautbois, so high wood, hautbois. there are many elements which were pointing that France, it's a very important center for the wind instruments, and especially for oboe. So the manufacturing of instruments is in France. Mainly all oboe players in the world are playing on the French oboes. Also me, I play on the wonderful oboe Marigot, with the brand Marigot, which is, I think, on the top of in my subjective opinion, among other brands for the oboe. But of course, it's very personal. And also French Baroque composers, of course, were writing for oboe. Couperin. We have beautiful pieces, Rameau. And the wood, of course, from which we are making our reeds, is growing in some very specific parts in south of France. So there are many indications why, certainly founding myself in the middle of Paris, being 16, completely by my own, without speaking one word in French in that time, of course, with my very poor English, then I felt, okay, I am in a different planet. I am in some kind of center for my instrument. So that was a very memorable and very extremely dear period to me.
Fantastic. What an auspicious. So you were taken practically, thank God for that one visit, which was not planned. And I'm sure you're very grateful to Dolzhikov.
Well, I think this is the main thing. Is exactly the point, that we think these coincidences, these chances we get in life, which we're all waiting for without waiting, but we are eager without being eager. We just would like that it would happen at a certain point. And sometimes it's impossible to know, of course, are we ready? Are we not ready? Is this the right timing, or this is not the right timing? So when I think back, I think, that one phone call, if we are going from the very beginning, that Dolzhikov would call my parents and say, just bring your son to this masterclass. Who knows?
Yeah, because, just to go to international competition, where is the guarantee that he'll be there or he'll hear about you? But, one could speculate it could have happened anyway, but in the way it happened, and it's a big leap of faith, of course, not only on your part, but on the part of your parents, how the only son to let go. And, the Russian parents are always so protective of their children, and they like to keep them as long as possible. And
it was not easy. It was not easy, especially the first year, of course, was very hard. But as I say, I'm so grateful, and I'm sure that they both also felt that this is in a way, unique chance.
Yeah.
And especially in that moment, and of course, I was really going to study, to learn, to take the best from this particular school, French school, with all the great traditions. So that was the main objective. Then later, the life turned in such a way that I stayed in Europe, and I live in Europe now for many years. But it's always special and warm to be back with the concerts into Russia.
Of course,
very regular.
Of course.
In normal times, very regular. Now nothing is possible.
In normal times, it was a regular point of destination. But that story also reminded me of a story I heard about 2 years ago of French violinist Pierre Ramoyal, who was a little bit older than you are when Heifetz came to Paris. And all of a sudden he gets a phone call, said, well, Pierre, he's listening to a number of violinists and this and that. And so he came and played for him, and he wasn't charmed because Heifetz was not a very, easy person to get to know and to like right away. He was intimidating. So he played for him and he sort of forgot about it. And then in the meantime, he was always worshiping David Oistrakh. And so they were already making, sort of, David Oistrakh said that I will take you into my class in Moscow Conservatory. So he was sort of preparing. In the meantime, a few weeks later, he gets a letter from Heifetz saying, well, I will take you to this. You have to come to California and everything. So he had this two greatest magnets, and his heart was actually, he wanted to go to Moscow. So in order to make up his mind, he actually called Oyster. And he said, Maestro Oyster, I have this, what should I do? I really would love to come to you, but I also have now a letter from Mr. Heifetz. And what should I do? He said, take Heifetz's offer. If I were you, I'd go myself. To Heifetz, and that's how you make it. He said, it's such a chance. And that basically, his life would have been very different if he came to Moscow. It was way, he's older than me. So it was long time ago, in the 60s. So it's an interesting thing how this chance meeting could.
Chances,
yeah. But then let's talk a little bit about how you ended up in Holland. Now you've been in Holland for many years.
Many years.
Yeah. So how did you end up in Rotterdam?
Well, that's also very special, because certainly a wonderful French flutist who is still a principal flute in the Rotterdam Philharmonic, Juliette Hurel, she studied with Maurice Bourg chamber music in Paris Conservatory, and she told him at certain point, Maurice, if you have some students, our orchestra, it's a wonderful orchestra. Valery Gergiev is the chief conductor. It's amazing. And we are having wonderful tours and all kind of real proper symphonic repertoire. And we have a beautiful hall in Rotterdam. So we are searching already for the orchestra. Is already have been searching for a few years for principal of all. If you have some students, please spread the news. And so this is how I heard from Maurice that there is this position in Rotterdam. And of course, in that time, I had not much connection with the Netherlands. I was still a student in Paris. I was focused completely on my study. I already won Geneva competition by then, which happened young, at my age of 19. So I already had some good experience as a soloist, but absolutely zero experience as an orchestra member, as an orchestra player. Apart of few orchestra sessions with a student orchestra in Paris Conservatory. So Maurice told me about this position. He said, maybe it's good if you try to you take your chances. Who knows? It's a new experience. And I talked to my other teachers, and one of them told me, you do this audition.
Oh.
So I was a bit, I have to say, I was 20 then, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. Somebody is deciding for me. So what I have to do. And so, I asked him, but I was open and I was listening to him very carefully, because he was also a fantastic teacher for me. And he said, you already know what does it mean to win a big international competition, but you don't know what it means to win an orchestra job. And he said, if you will wait now without taking any experience in that until the moment that maybe your dream position will be open, certainly in one or other orchestra, but really some orchestra and some place of first solo bow in that orchestra that it would really your absolute dream, you might fail the audition, at least because you don't know what it is to convince people after playing 3 lines of Mozart concerto behind the screen and not have a chance to play 1 hour full recital from Baroque to contemporary music for oboe in semi-final as a 3rd round from 4 rounds in such a competition as Geneva. So I thought he seemed completely right. So I just went to Rotterdam and I played this audition. The only thing that it happened that I won it. And then I took, for the second time in my life, a suitcase with 20 kilos and started from zero for second time in my life in another country. Which was of course a very beautiful period for me in Rotterdam. Fantastic.
Now let me read you one question and a story that is taken exactly at that time when you were first on your trial year. So this is the question. In your first year with us in Rotterdam, so it comes from Rotterdam Philharmonic, musician. You were 20 years old. We played, so the orchestra played Das Lied von der Erde with Donald Runnicles conducting. You're playing in the last movement, their Abschied is still in my ears, he writes. How did you prepare this solo technically and also in the musical sense? By the way, Runnicles, who knew me personally, asked me who was playing the oboe. I said, well, this young guy is on trial. He answered, if it were up to me, I'd give him the job now. So
That's
that
nice
was
to hear.
going on. Nice to know, even so many years later. Yeah,
That's,
so tell
that's
me.
wonderful. No, that's true. This Rotterdam, I remember very well, of course, this, of course, I was also full of emotions after winning the position, being 20 in the major European orchestra, with a major chief conductor, which was Valery Gergiev at that moment, and many fantastic guest conductors who were coming. Just to name one was Sir Simon Rattle, who have been extremely loyal, I think, for so many years, and I think still is, to Rotterdam Philharmonic, and who was coming literally every season, I think, at least until his nomination with Berlin Philharmonic. So everything was for the first time. It was the first Mahler, and I think that Das Lied von der Erde with Maestro Runnicles was my first Mahler ever in the orchestra. And it happened to be immediately Das Lied von der Erde, which is one of the, we call it in our oboe world, it's like a oboe concerto inside of the orchestra. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. It's a full of most incredible solos, and I had a chance to, so that was the first Mahler, it was the first Bruckner with Valery, and it was immediately, I think, Bruckner 9, so it was immediately completely another world, and first time Strauss, some symphonic poems, and first time Beethoven symphony, etc., etc. So it was extremely exciting, challenging, of course, also, but very exciting time when you feel you want now after studying for a few years in Paris and trying to take the best from this fantastic French school for oboe. Now you are going into the adult life, you have a job, but now it's only starting. Now it's starting. Now you start really to learn what it is to play in the orchestra and how to react and how to transform. And I like this comparison in the way of symphony orchestra being a broader version of chamber music, even though, of course, we have a conductor in front who is responsible artistically for the main conception, etc. But still, it's about being communicative on stage. It's about being alert. It's about antennas on 100% all the time. So that was absolutely great time. But indeed, it was the first Mahler and first Bruckner and first Strauss and first Tchaikovsky, which was my very first week in the Rotterdam Philharmonic was Tchaikovsky 4, which is also a very big oboe solo, which is also on every audition to the orchestra, different orchestras. So I was, of course, very happy and relieved, and felt like a confirmation of something that I'm not doing something wrong when I got my permanent contract after the first trial season, because during this first trial season, I had for the first time many new pieces, but also I had 4 among of most important oboe solos in the orchestra. So it was Tchaikovsky 4, Brahms Violin Concerto, Mahler Das Lied, and Ravel Tombeau de Couperin. So it was all in one season, which is already very seldom that it happens, that so many pieces with such oboe solos are inside of one season for any orchestra. But also the chance that I had it to play all of them for the first time, it was a really very special altogether.
Great thrill. It's interesting because now that we've sort of touched upon the three countries and three cultures and three very important part of your life. Obviously Russia, because you come from there, your roots, your first language is Russian, then France, which became such an important, you just explained, and now it's Holland, because you made your, not only you worked in Holland, you made your home in Holland, your family's is in Holland. And that's where, whenever they ask me, where's your home? My home has been now in London for many years because my family is here, and my daughter was born in London. So it is my home. Though, of course, my next question, the question that I will ask you will challenge what I just said. Apart from taking, obviously, the best from all those three cultures, do you still consider yourself as a Russian artist, or has it changed? Or now you're really a combination? If it is, explain.
Well, I think Russian soul stays Russian soul. So of course, the first 16 most important years of my life were in Russia. I am still a lot in touch with Russia, of course. So I am, of course, a Russian artist. That's clear. It's also true that I had a chance, as you say, to take the best from different schools, to know and to experience this incredible rigueur, how they say in France, the discipline,
work ethic, also.
Yeah, discipline while studying in Paris, which marked me so much, because the concurrence was so incredibly high. So you had to focus, to be focused 100% non-stop, 24/7, really. And then so a few years were in France, and now, more than 20 years in the Netherlands, with 6 years with the Rotterdam Philharmonic and 16 years with the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. So of course, this is also, it's true. It was great to know the different cultures, but I think it's going further than that, because of course, with all the crazy artistic life we had until this moment, which is already almost for a year we are living it. I had a chance to play on the big important stages with absolutely phenomenal musicians of in classical music world. So many of them were from many other nationalities than French or Dutch. So I think I took and somehow consciously and unconsciously more than just two cultures. But of course, I am living in the Netherlands, and of course, my wife is Dutch. So I learned, and I'm still learning, I think, every day, certain things. But I think this is what makes one feel rich. No? It's a kind of combination of different schools and different traditions, and even if I'm thinking at least only about our orchestra, the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, which is I will allow myself to say it's a really exceptional bunch of people with such incredible traditions, and really I love this orchestra. I do. I really love it. So, but it's also became so international in last few years. So, but still we are performing in the same hall. We are trying to respect the traditions which were there from the time of Medvedberg. Then later Haitink still was playing until recently with Haitink, when Maestro Haitink still was conducting. So, but also it's a permanent exchange on stage with different nationalities, with different people, with having different backgrounds, etc., etc. So it's very alive altogether.
Yeah. What do you think? Because there's two ways of looking at the development of orchestral life, which now has so much interchange, as you just described, Concertgebouw being so international, so is Berlin Philharmonic. Even Vienna now is not really made only of Viennese male musicians, you know, it's all changing. And America was always a melting pot. But somebody could, uh, and I think it's not without reason, that the so-called French sound, Russian sound, Italian sound, British sound, or, you know, sort of the national sound of an orchestra has dissipated somewhat, because what is the, you know, the Concertgebouw is really a combination of all the great musicians like yourself, plus different. If you look at the string section, it's hardly all Dutch string players, right? Or, you know, you take any Scandinavian, you take any East European, it's very difficult. Maybe Russia is still not big enough on foreign musicians. So when a Russian orchestra comes, it's predominantly Russian. But even that sound. So what do you think? How important do you think to have, you know, a certain sound of an orchestra, Concertgebouw sound, Berlin sound, Vienna sound, and so forth? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is, yeah, it's this is interesting because, of course, I was growing with listening to the recordings of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, all the recordings, and there are fantastic, incredible number of CDs, cycles recorded with this conductor, with another conductor, a lot, of course, with Bernard Haitink, who was for almost 25 years a chief conductor with the orchestra. Then I was so lucky to experience and to be there during almost all the period of Maris Janssons with Concertgebouw Orchestra, and of course there are some certain traditions, and of course I believe that it's directly related to the hall, which is as old as the orchestra, 1888.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is not nothing. So that it's, I think I remember after my first year in the orchestra, one of my colleagues from Concertgebouw came to me and he said, "You changed your playing so much in this 1 year."
Interesting.
And it was, I am sure it was completely unconscious. It was not that I certainly, after winning this audition, I was running home and thinking, what do I have to do? How I have to make my read now to fit in certain way. I think this is the richesse, no, of this orchestra also, to accept different people coming from different schools, having different backgrounds, but and we know, of course, that every orchestra has many people, has many opinions, and also musical opinions, etc. So it's also very interesting and very exciting. But it's, for me, it's always amazing how in our orchestra I strongly feel, even though it's so international now and became even more international in last decade, how we go, once we are all on stage together, we go to one artistic goal. There is an incredible unity, and I think if I would have to name one specific quality of our orchestra, I would say flexibility. And I think it says all. So for me, this is great, how the combination of keeping the traditions from the past and trying to, without skipping, without destroying, certainly not, but the opposite, to add something from your side to it and to let it develop and to let it grow further. And I think this is the strength.
And to go with, not only with the big personality conductor, but also to go along with the strong leaders within the orchestra. And if they acquired a great first oboe, which is very important, or the great first flute, or great first horn, or a great timpani player is incredibly important.
We
So
have all
it
of those.
changes the
We have all of
exactly,
those.
exactly. And a great bassoon player. I mean, my goodness. So, I mean, you could just look at some of the best, some of my favorite recordings with Carlos Kleiber, doing Beethoven fourth and seventh.
No,
I mean,
this is
that is
historical. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely
absolutely.
beyond any
It's
comments. Yeah.
yeah, it's Fort Knox of recorded live concerts. I think they you could try to reach. It could be, it's a very high level to reach, but this is certainly, it's as good as it gets.
No, I was growing with this recording. I think I know every breathing of the oboe player of my predecessor, who is playing on that recording of Beethoven 7 with Carlos Kleiber, because I thought the orchestra was sounding so exceptional. But also, once you look at Carlos Kleiber, you think, this is it. This is the freedom.
Yeah.
This is the freedom on stage, and I think this is something we are all searching for. We are searching to feel free on stage, for the expression, to be able to express ourselves with freedom.
But it's a very elusive thing, of course, for him, first and foremost, because he was incredibly nervous and uncertain of himself, whether it will actually happen. And sometimes he had a ticket in Berlin. They told me that he had a ticket booked back to Munich after each rehearsal. He thought he would cancel it because he was so nervous himself. He was such a narcissistic, very, very special, incredibly sensitive creature, which he generated that excitement, and that probably because of that nervous energy that he emanated.
Well, luckily he didn't cancel this performance of these two Beethoven symphonies, because they are really now.
I know.
It's great example of his artistry. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the top of what he's done, along with, of course, the Fledermaus and the Rosenkavalier and a few other things that he's done, probably like no one else. But he did have he was only sure about certain pieces of music, and there was other things, always repertoire of his father. He knew a lot of other repertoire, but he only conducted very, very limited things. Now that we started, to discuss conductors, we started at the very top. So let's, because we should not forget that now you also joined the rank of conductors. Now, let me ask you, because there was one of the questions. Yes, many principal players, not only, of course, but many soloists, do they begin to conduct? What for you are the main reasons in that trend of the last few decades? In the past, the borders between the professions were much more defined than now. Share your thoughts about it. Because it's true, if you elaborate on this, 50 years ago, there was a class of conductors that did only conducting. There was a class of pianists that did only of playing. In the history of one of the most celebrated pianists of all time, Richter, he conducted only one time in his life, and that was it. He once accompanied Sinfonia Concertante for Rostropovich for the premiere. It's the only time. Never touched it. Yeah, and so forth. And then it started to change. And in the last maybe 25, 30 years of the 20th century, and especially now, it's a common thing. It's you can hardly find a soloist or principal player who doesn't play, conduct, or conduct. And so, what's your view, and what was sort of your raison d'etre? Why the reasons for expanding in that direction?
Well, I think I could really only talk about my own experience.
Of course.
Because I strongly believe that everybody has his or her own path, and the circumstances and the reasons might be very different for every person. So I would not allow myself to talk more general, but I remember very well this feeling, which was an absolutely true feeling for me, in the sense of I have no problem to look myself in the in the mirror. I really felt it. It's sitting in the center of the human being. You know? I just woke up at certain point a few years ago, and I thought there is a clear internal drive. I feel very happy and rich artistically to play with some most incredible instrumentalists, Gidon Kremer, Radu Lupu, Tommy Kvasthoff. We did it Habe Genuch and Verbier, which was absolutely unforgettable, of course, as a singer, and many others, really. From one side, and to play a lot, to be present a lot as a soloist on stage. From the other side, to be a part of the great orchestra, and to have a chance to cover and to play basically almost all the cycles are done for me, because now 22 years in the orchestra, it feels like a serious musical luggage, and also not just any orchestra, but the great orchestra, two great orchestras, and with the absolutely best conductors in front. So that was a very clear feeling. I am ready. I would like to be in touch now with more than one line. I would like to have a chance to be in touch with more lines, to open the score, to study, to learn, to go more in depth from one side, and from the other side, of course, this accumulating on so many different schools and approaches and elements and information I could get from absolutely a number of great artists altogether. It's almost it became as a sort of almost a need to be able to express differently than only playing one line. I love my instrument. It's a voice. It's a best instrument. It's a king of the instruments. That's why we have solos like Brahms' Violin Concerto when the violinists have difficulties sometimes, according to some historical stories, to start to play, etc. So it was an absolutely true internal feeling that I should try, and I should do my best, and I would like to have a chance to be able to express myself also in this way. So, and I am very happy that there is a number of conducting engagements every year, and I really would like to develop that as much as I can. It's always a dilemma because, of course, I still want to play, of course. Yeah. Of course. So this is the it's not right to look at it from a difficult angle. I think I should look at it, and maybe some other people in the similar situation as me probably can look at it from the lucky approach, and that there is a chance to play here like this and to express yourself on stage differently, and to be able to also to work with different orchestras. And I think it's complementary for my own development. I find it complementary very important. Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at, there's so many for instance, actors, which could be compared to the players, like us, to musicians that want to direct because they have a vision, and some of them become great directors, but not very often. The same thing happens with us, but not to be able to experience it and to get into it. I think it's maybe if you have a chance, I think everybody should try to conduct, because to be able to, as I always sort of compare it, to be in the eye of the storm. So you are really in the epicenter of every sound that is going on. Yet, physically speaking, you're not really producing sound. You don't sing. Sometimes we sing in
It's
just
coming by itself. Yeah.
yeah, but internally or some we make some kind of sounds, but basically we don't make any sounds, and yet we are responsible and we have an influence on every sound that comes as well as. And for me, for instance, one of the main reasons and one of the biggest sort of mystery of the profession was actually how a great conductor brings, without even thinking about it, just by standing in front of an orchestra. It doesn't have to be the greatest orchestra like, Concertgebouw Berlin, but it could be just a very regular orchestra, and he brings his own sound. For me, that was incredibly interesting and challenging. How, and you can see it so clearly. There's documentary, The Art of Conducting, where you have great conductors. You see even Nikish without the soundtrack, but anyway, everybody from Nikish on. You have great London Symphony with Bernstein. You have Karajan, of course, with Berlin. And then you see Stokowski conducting BBC, not Philadelphia, not his Los Angeles orchestra, was not his orchestra, it was a guest conducting engagement. And yet, BBC, like never before and never since, sound just like Philadelphia. That is extraordinary for me. Of course, he was a great tinkerer with sitting. He would sit them differently. Whatever it took, it doesn't matter. They sound like bloody Philadelphia. And that is, and that is so far in terms of the mentality. I know BBC players, there's a wonderful orchestra, but a completely different sound than Philadelphia at the time of Stokowski. So he brought his own sound. And that, for me, Carlos Kleiber always brought his sound. Every orchestra was just so charged up and so inspired, so nervous energy was there. But it was, positive nervous energy, but still, So that was always, for me, I tried to juxtapose that to violin, because as a violinist, I'm able to get my sound and to sound like me. Any violin, even simple violin, is a factory. I learned that maybe, or I observed it from my mother. My mother could make an upright piano sing, because she has that gift. Even an upright would be sounding bel canto with Bela Davidovich.
Well, I believe this is one of, I believe, I think this is in the way one of the proofs, if we can say, of the really great maestro.
Exactly.
Absolutely, we cannot express and explain everything with words, but it's about aura around. And I agree, having a chance to work with the best conductors coming to our orchestra, for example, or few others with who I had a chance to play as a soloist. It's incredible to see how one can transform the orchestra just by being there, by standing there before starting even conducting.
Exactly.
That's true.
And that is, for me, that's sort of miraculous thing, because it's not something you cannot really get into the technical side. It has nothing to do with technique. It's just something, just a presence, just bring.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's nothing to do with technical side, because the techniques are also has such a variety now, and but also I think also the needs, in the way the needs of the orchestra members are also different. Somebody probably need really very clear 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe somebody else. For me, the inspirational part is very, very important. 1, 2, 3, 4. I understand. It's it's probably easier to play when it's all very, very clean and clear, and by moments also necessary, depending on the repertoire, of course. But the inspirational side, and this is something which is coming with the personality of the conductor standing in front.
Exactly right. And for those You know, there are two questions that related to this, which is on the list. One is interesting because you worked with, of course, as you said, with many outstanding conductors, but especially with two music directors who come from the same school, from the same great St. Petersburg school, and yet they couldn't be more different. And that is, of course, Valery Gergiev in Rotterdam and Maris Janssens in Concertgebouw. What did you learn? What would you say were the most interesting things that you learned, both as a musician, playing in the orchestra, but also for your next second career now as a conductor? What would you take away from them in a positive sense?
Well, this is also, I have to say, for me, has been a permanent. I see it as a permanent masterclass. I understand the masterclass cannot happen without practice doing things yourself. Of course, it's not one instead of the other. It cannot be this way. It should be also together with it, but already only by playing in the orchestra with many great conductors, including two great maestros you just mentioned. That's also a unique opportunity, and it's for me it's absolutely masterclass. I am learning. I am cutting myself in two. Here I have to play my solo in Brahms Violin Concerto, and here I am observing how one is building the rehearsal procedure, what images he is using, how he spent his time on what, etc., etc. So it's extremely it's double interesting and double exciting. Let's say that's true. Yeah, Valery and Maris have been very, very, very different, and that's why I think also absolutely no comparison needed. Absolutely no comparison, because why? Maris was, and I feel so privileged that I catched 10 years of his chief conductor position from his 11 altogether with Concertgebouw Orchestra. Maris, of course, that was the aristocrat in a good way, and then it was an extremely kind. It was a beautiful person. I think it was a beautiful personality, absolutely, and of course, incredible level of preparation.
Yeah,
incredible level of preparation. Incredible level of self-criticism to start with. Then he could be, of course, he could, and he had to make comments to one player, to the other player, to put things together, to bring it in the way he wanted. But it was a highly cultural man, highly. So of course you feel this. We know he was assisting, sitting, being a small boy, assisting already, listening to Mravinsky rehearsing in the St. Petersburg Philharmonic in this great period in St. Petersburg Concert Hall, coming himself from the musical family, and we both know what does that mean to come from musical family. So with his father being a very good conductor, also Arvid. So Maris was a very classy person, and the absolutely top maestro who got the greatest orchestras in this last big period of his career.
Yeah,
completely deserved, and he was really like a papa to our orchestra. For me, this is my perception. So it was really a role, complete role of the chief conductor, being a chief conductor with the top orchestra. He understood what it means, I think. So but what was really remarkable is the very good taste and the incredible, super detailed preparation on the absolutely highest level, and then you also want to be a part of this. Yeah. You want absolutely to lift, to push the limits. So that was a great thing about him.
I would say the incredible level of honesty and
Absolutely.
modesty also as a music.
Also,
He never
also,
stopped learning, and he always looked at the same scores, even though he knew every little corner. He always was looking for something new to discover in familiar pieces. I think that incredible uh, thirst for knowledge and humility as a human being.
absolutely.
I think there were his.
This is what I mean. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And Valery is unique. Valery can transform by mentioning 3-4 very precise little comments. He can transform Sacre de Printemps in 3 minutes.
Into something.
He is able to. From my experience with him, he is at the moment of the concert, he's a master. He can move any way he wants. He's moving mountains. It's incredible. This
Great
experience,
courage, great artistic courage to be on
yes,
stage.
yes, but
Yeah.
also
Power.
through artistic power on stage.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But also this ability, for me, the ability to let the orchestra, even the top orchestra, sound with the forte, literally with the feeling that the ceiling is opening and the skies are opening. It's never, there is never, you never feel any limit. Yeah, you don't feel a limit. It's continue, the sound continue to grow. It's full, it's rich, it's beautiful. It's quite, I think it's really something really amazing. But also, sorry?
Yeah, exciting. You get the visceral
excitement. The excitement is not something we're missing there. No, for sure not. When in the Netherlands, like often Rotterdam Philharmonic or Concertgebouw, we play in normal times up to 4 concerts a week. So imagine we play for 4 times Bruckner 9 with him. They were never, as far as I remember in my Rotterdam times with him, they were never one same culmination point, but all of them were extremely convincing, but they happened at the moment. And that for me was incredible to observe and to see how he is like a top chef. He has the ingredients to make an incredible, I don't know, millefeuille, no? The few layers, many layers, some spectacular cake. And it's there are some chefs maybe would make absolutely delicious cake the night before, put it in the fridge, and at the moment of the concert, give it to public and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is my cake." But obviously, there are some other type of people who are listening, who has the ability to hear and to take and to understand the language of the orchestra, which the orchestra suggests and propose after first reading, and who is able to use these particular ingredients to make in front of you, like on the TV show, in front of you, a most unbelievable cake.
At the moment.
At the moment.
So it's a real performance artist. Yeah, he creates it at the moment. It's very interesting because in some ways I thought always that, for instance, great Claudio Abbado was also what you call the evening conductor. You know, in the rehearsal he spoke very softly, very little. You know, sometimes people had a hard time even listening to his comments. But in the concert, he just transformed into the.
But I have to say. That's true, but I also have to say that, for example, Maris, even though, as we said, it was such an incredibly highest level detailed work, and he could really spend time on one specific passage until the moment that it would sound exactly like he would wish it would, it should, but at the moment of the concert, he was giving freedom. Yes. And this is also, for me, while experiencing it myself and also observing it from outside, when I was coming to the concerts of our orchestra or other orchestras which he was conducting being in the public, I could feel it. It was very clear, and this is I think it's a great quality also.
Absolutely.
To be able to work so much and to be so dedicated to and believing that this is the way from one side, and another, and from the other side to be able to give space and to the players at the moment of the concert to express themselves in the most beautiful way.
So let's turn now to something that's very, very present and very problematic. What have you been doing for the last year, and how do you cope with the pandemic? I mean, how has it affected you, and what have you learned also for yourself, the time that you had with your family, how it affected your life, and how to cope with it?
Well, I believe that as many of us, having in normal times a completely crazy schedule, going from one place to the other, from one concert to the other, from one festival to the other, I discovered a completely different side of life. Which is of course I lost all my solo and conducting engagements during this period, like almost everybody. I am very, very happy that our orchestra is playing. I am very happy. I learned, which is a great thing, because we meet on regular basis and we play, and the top conductors and soloists are still coming to us, and this is wonderful. We keep playing, and we keep being in communication humanly and musically. So I think this is wonderful. I learned to give lessons and to teach online. I have a big class in Geneva in the Haute École de Musique, which is very dear to me, and I have a wonderful class. So it's difficult. It's difficult for them. It's very difficult. For me, it's much more tiring. I discovered it's much more tiring to teach from my room. The interaction is not the same, but I learned, and I also learned to see some good sides. And we do the very, very regular lessons, and I do my best to keep my students motivating, and they are. So that's good, and I have a chance to check it and see it every week. But also because certainly everything stopped. The normal crazy from one airport to the one restaurant after the concert and then back home. For me, and I think for many people who found themselves in the similar situation as me, being a young parent, because I have a beautiful twin daughters, 2 years old. So this is a completely other side of the coin.
Yeah.
I saw them walking. I can spend a lot of time with them. I am making porridge every morning for them, together with my wife, of course. But it's a completely different aspect. And of course, well, the timing happened in this way. But of course, with all the dramatic things which we all as artists we were experiencing for last year, all keeping a hope that it will get back to normal as soon as possible, or as close as possible also to what we call normal, right? But I also had this other side, which was completely different. And I am also very thankful that I have this time with my family, which I can observe myself now really living with them, for them, etc., instead of just thinking if I have a read for the next Strauss concert. It's very different. It's very different. It's very different. But it's very double-sided.
But unlike you and colleagues like you who have, still your salary, you have concerts even though without public, so your life has not been completely derailed. Completely, your solo and guest conducting engagements, of course, been canceled, but you still have your sort of main, menu, musical menu has not been all taken away. What would be your, how would you look at your own students or at the younger generation who just been starting, to go up in the world and to have aspirations, and now for a year everything's been done,
Very
gone.
difficult. Yes, this is of course it's a very big problem. It's very difficult. I believe, and I tell it to my students. As an artist, I think as a performing artists, and the students are, of course, it's their future. Hopefully, this is what we aim for. We need to have a clear goals. We need to know. They need to know. They need to know. In 3 months, I have this exam, or in half year, I prepare that competition, or after tomorrow, I will record a full Mozart concerto because I prepare it for some audition for my teacher, and he will listen very carefully, and then he will call me and he will give all the necessary comments. So it can be different levels of goals.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. So, but I think this is we have to survive. We have to go through this for sure. So to have a clear goal and not just to let the hands go down. This is the arms go down. This is, I think, what we should aim for, and everybody should find it on their step where the person is, because it can be very different.
Yeah, but it's just looking at their situation, they can always say, well, it's easy for you to say because financially you're okay, and or in my case, they said, oh, you've already had so much in your life, it's not tragedy if you don't do anything more. Of course, it's all individual. Some people think of me as being a young performer wrestler who's still, and was telling me about all his engagements and all his experiences in his 90s. So it depends very much. I happen to think that actually performing is the profession mostly for the young, with some exceptions, of course. I'm talking about instrumentalists because it is a very demanding thing for you to blow, for me to play and be half deaf in my left ear, as all violinists are, because of all the overtones going into straight. So I think there is a certain limit, and there is a certain time when, even in the previous life, without the pandemic, I think some of us, some of our colleagues just stay too long because they cannot imagine life without the stage. I can understand that, but I also think it's a bit selfish towards the young people, because we've had our youth. You're still in the middle of it, but you're mature artists now, and it's time for the young ones. And when I look, and I'm convinced that this is the right, and I look at their situation, what can they expect? And I do teach, as you, I've learned a lot of things completely new for myself. I've learned how to sustain my chamber orchestra from all over the world by doing, distant video. I did more transcriptions than I've ever done in my life. So I've organized my life creatively active in many, many different ways. But I'm in the lucky position to do it because I have the experience. I have the experience of immigration, of starting from a zero, which is similar to you. Your new life in France, you build up the invisible but very important muscles.
I had to.
Yeah, exactly. You had to at the age of 16. Then you came, you started new life in another culture. We know what it's like. Those who have not been through this, what words of encouragement can we give? Where are the guarantees that they're aiming for something? Or should we tell them maybe, as somebody, in various talks that I had prior to this, is it maybe important to have, a parallel develop a parallel profession. Maybe it's time to look at things because so much of our lives now is online. Maybe they should try to see something else. Maybe they should think of plan B, or just to be, soloist or play solo and chamber music is simply for young people is not practical anymore because
That's true.
the demand will be that much less anyway, because our
That's true.
life will never be
Well, from
the
this
same.
perspective, of course, oboe is still considered as a mainly orchestral instrument. Of course, the physical number of chairs is not comparable to the violins, no, for example,
Exactly.
or any other
Exactly.
string section. So we are maximum 5 and maximum 2 principal positions, and then 2 seconds, and then English horn. So, and this is in the best case. There are also many orchestras functioning with 4 players.
Or 3 or 4, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but still, this stays as a main goal, I think, generally speaking, for many students. If on top of that you are in demand and you have things to say and people are inviting you because they find you interesting for one or other reason to play solo, to play chamber music, on top of that, this is wonderful. This is wonderful.
Of course.
Green light, absolutely. But at first place, I think the orchestral literature for oboe is extremely rich.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think we should. One conductor who came recently to our orchestra said, in a very different context, but still, he said, we say normally, like people, we should play with love. I agree. Yeah. But he said, I think it's even more important. And when he said it, I thought, I completely agree with him. He said, I think even more important is to play with belief.
Yeah.
So this is what I would like to say to the younger ones. You have to believe in your path. Everybody will have a different path. It's like this. But if you love this instrument, if you love this direction, if you love classical music on the highest, and it should not stay as empty words, you should really love it completely. You should be filled with this feeling. Then you have to believe, and more than that, I would even say more practically, I would say, yes, right now it's in these extremely challenging times for everybody, to try to turn it around. Try to turn it as something positive. You are at home. Make 25 reeds every day. Practice to make a reeds. Warm up with the orchestra solos. When you are not in pressure in daily life, running from one class to the other, in one the other conservatory, being in the bachelor 18 or 20 years old and panicking before every exam. No? You don't have that, especially right now. So use this time and try to build the quality work at home. And I believe that as a teacher, this is one of the main, if not the main element which I'm aiming for as a teacher, is to let student understand, to teach the student how to practice at home with quality. Then it's a matter of taste, what you put inside of this word, what means quality. You think like this, I think like that, it's fine. But still, the goal is to put them on certain rails. They should not, I use the image, they should not drive as a drunk bus drivers. No, it should not go unpredictable. They should be at the tram drivers. They are on the rails, they can turn left and right, etc., but they are going steady. This is the goal. Some will succeed better than the others. It's like this. We are in the very high concurrence world. So it's like this, but we have to do our best.
Yes, and of course, for many instrumentalists or singers or any instrument, they have to remember one thing, and which is normally they don't have the time, or because their teachers don't talk about it. I don't know what the problem is. They never really pay much attention to the picture, the full picture, the score. when I give lessons, of a concerto, let's say of a Brahms concerto that we talked about, with that fantastic solo, even the violin part, it's a violin, it's only one, maybe at times most important, but not the only line there. It's one of many, 15, 16 lines, sometimes 20, sometimes 10, doesn't matter. It's only one point of view, but you have to so use your time to study scores without ever even having an inclination to conduct, but you have to listen to it. You have to be what you said about antennas before. You have to develop that antennas. And one of the hardest things and one of the most important things for progress is to be able to hear yourself as well, because they are, as you know, the reason we teach, especially online when we are practically on top of the student, we're right there. I said, oh, try to listen. Do you hear it yourself? I can tell you what the problem is, but my main task is to open your ears so
Absolutely,
you hear it yourself, isn't it? And this is the time. We have a lot of time on our own, alone. So listening to yourself, trying to learn how to listen, and also be aware of the whole picture. I think that we never had so much time to really absorb. It's like, you're making yourself much more of a musician, of a complete musician. And
absolutely, we are talking over basically every lesson we are talking about very similar things, and the projection of sound, and in the whole, how it would sound in the whole, etc., etc. And as you say, to learn to analyze what you are doing right now. Absolutely, this is a key. It's a key.
Absolutely. Listen, we could talk indefinitely, but I've already taken a lot of your time. It's 5:15 in London, 6:15. Let me just quickly ask you, because one of the previous guests was a wonderful Russian composer, Alexander Raskatov. I believe he's writing a concerto for you, right?
That's right.
Yeah, he's been commissioned an oboe concerto. What's your relationship? How? Because for me, it's always very, very exciting. The time it's sort of like when I perform for the first time new piece, especially written for me, it's like a birth of sorts,
Absolutely, it's exactly like this, and I'm very, very much looking forward. I think it will be really extremely exciting project for all of us, and for him, for me, for sure. Of course, I had a chance to have 2 world premieres so far. It was quite a while ago. It was like 10 years ago. I had a oboe concerto written for me by Rodion Shchedrin.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that was very, very exciting, and also Marc-André Delbary, a famous French composer. So 2 completely different pieces. And Alexander Raskatov, I met first time at the festival of Gidon Kremer in Lockenhaus. That was many, many years ago. He was one of the composers in residence and giving workshops, etc., etc. And it was a very, very interesting meeting for me. I think he is a wonderful composer and very kind person as well. So I'm very much looking forward to this project. But as you say, it's one big excitement. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's see what he produces. Wonderful. Well, let's hope we're all going to meet in real life, in person, and could be in the same room.
We hope for the best.
Absolutely. And make music, and let's hope that the whole vaccine movement will overpower, and our world will be vaccinated, and we could come back to some kind of new normal.
That we would start to breathe again a bit, yeah.
Exactly, which is so important for oboe, but for all of us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dima.
It's been a great pleasure, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for all our audience, and you could watch it later on, of course, on the website. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and listen to a lot of interesting stuff there. Thank you.
Thanks so much.